Welcome to week 3. We will be doing 3 modules this week, so you'll be looking for module 4, 5, and 6. This is just an overview of module 4, where we will be covering chapter 5, all about coping with and reducing stress. So you have your to-do list as usual. We will be looking at Chapter 5 in the Longevity Project as well, which is all about catastrophic thinking. And you'll have a discussion post based on that reading along with Chapter 5 in your main textbook. So the objectives for Chapter 5 for Serafino and Smith are just first being able to define coping, what is it, knowing about it in general, as well as looking at some strategies that people use, good and bad, for coping, and what the goals of coping are. So when we talk about coping with a bad life circumstance or an instance or stress or an experience that we've had, coping is our effort to deal with or mitigate the effects of what we're feeling from the stress or from that event. And we can do that in positive ways as well as negative ways. So we're going to take a look at a couple different types of coping called problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. A lot of coping strategies fall within these two main categories, but each is used differently. The plan of attack that the person uses in sort of targeting their stress as well as targeting the circumstances around their stress is very different based on which one they use. So you will be asked as you're reading the text to take a look at what kind of coper you are, problem-focused or emotion-focused coper. So that'll be interesting because sometimes we think we know sort of how we cope with things. We think we know what our kind of go-to patterns are, and you might be a little surprised. Both types of coping are, or I should say, can be good. It just depends on how you use them and when you use them. We'll also be looking at avoidant coping and proactive coping. And then the different coping methods that people use dependent on the person, the individual. So here's where, again, personality traits come into play. Based on your personality, you may gravitate towards one type of coping versus another. It might also depend on your social support network, because coping largely depends on the support that you have in your life. What kind of support system have you built up around you to help you during times of stress? We'll also look at some other behavioral methods of coping like exercising, as well as some specific stress management techniques and relaxation techniques, things like meditation, but also cognitive strategies of how do we think about our stress, because oftentimes how we think about our stress dictates then how we behave in response to our stress. We'll also look at some other treatment for stress reduction, such as medication, and this tends to be for the more dramatic stress experiences in life, like maybe the loss of a loved one or PTSD, suffering trauma, things like that. We'll talk about some different categories of stress and explain, what types of stress management techniques might be best for the different types of stressors that we might face in our life. We'll also be taking a look at the link between stress and coronary heart disease in this chapter as well as in the next chapter that we're going to be tackling. So here are your lecture slides that go along with that. Your module, again, deals with catastrophic thinking. So you're going to take the assessment in the longevity book in chapter 5, and you're going to find out if you tend to be a catastrophizing type of person. You'll also see for the termites, what did that mean for them? Those that tend to take on the more catastrophizing role, like everything is a catastrophe. You know, the world is falling. They named the chapter The Fate of Chicken Littles, because if you know anything about Chicken Little, it was like the sky is falling over every little thing. That can be good in terms of, you know, having a certain level of conscientiousness about things, but it can also be bad, you know, if you're worrying unnecessarily about things. And then, so it's going to also talk a little bit about catastrophic thinking and its links to pessimism. So we tend to think of catastrophic thinking as being more on the pessimistic side of things, the glass half empty side of viewing circumstances in life. And then that's going to change. So if you viewed life that way, it's going to change then how you attack it, you know, what kind of coping styles you employ to combat that. So that's Module 4, sort of in a nutshell, and the next podcast we'll look at Module 5.